Hey, Husker fans, welcome to another episode of the Husker Big Red podcast with Chris Peterson and Danny Gillette. As always, go Big Red. Good morning, Husker fans, and welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me as always is Danny Gillette, and we're back here on a Monday morning for another episode of our podcast here, and it was an exciting weekend for the Huskers. We got another blue-chip quarterback commitment with TJ Lateef, so we're going to talk about that. We'll cover baseball and softball and some other recruiting news that happened over the weekend, but first, how you doing, Danny, on this Monday morning?
Good, up bright and early. I'd rather not cover baseball or softball, but we have to. But a good Sunday. Hope everybody out there had a good Mother's Day, and Nebraska got some exciting news on Mother's Day with the commitment of TJ Lateef. So that kept me busy on the writing front yesterday. Excited about that one.
Yeah, it was another big pickup for the Huskers, and so we'll get into that and what it means for Nebraska football. Before we talk about that and get into everything, please make sure to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Hit the like button, get into the comments section, and support the channel. If you like the content that you see here, if you're a Nebraska fan. But yeah, like you said, Danny, it was a big, kind of not really a surprise. I could feel a commitment coming. You had all of these crystal balls coming on Saturday. For TJ Lateef, because there wasn't any before that. There was expert projection on with there weren't any crystal balls that had come in until Saturday, and so then I started to feel pretty confident that a commitment was coming. TJ Lateef had never talked about a date. He just said he would kind of commit when he felt like it, and it turns out he felt like it on Sunday. And this is a big commitment for the Huskers, the number 238 overall player in the 2025 class. This is their first four-star commitment. All the other commitments that they'd had so far in 2024 or 2025 were 3 stars. So, a really important commitment. The 17th ranked quarterback. What are some of your thoughts and why are you so excited about TJ Lateef?
Well, for one, it gives Nebraska the quarterback that they've really wanted over these last couple cycles. They missed out on Alex Mansky. They missed out on Matt Zoller. So they were really looking for another quarterback to shore up the roster for future classes, and they got it with Lateef. And he's very similar to the other quarterbacks that Nebraska has been looking for in terms of play style. He has a strong arm. He can make throws in the pocket. He can run when needed, but that's not his primary avenue to make plays. And with this offensive line and this group of wide receivers, his play style is the perfect fit for this program. And also it gives Nebraska a quarterback from California, which I think will be important, especially with USC and UCLA and the West Coast teams coming into the Big Ten or whatever it's going to be now, no longer 10. But I think this was a really good commitment overall. It gives Nebraska the quarterback that they've been searching for, and a high quality quarterback at that. And it also speaks to the job that Glenn Thomas has done kind of over the last couple of months. He was the primary recruiter for Lateef. He heavily recruited Lateef as soon as he was named a member of the staff. And so you're seeing his value pay off, not just on the field like we saw in the spring game and the improved play of the quarterbacks, but also on the recruiting trail. And, I think that says something to the impact that Thomas is bringing to the program as well.
Yeah, and so you'll remember with TJ Lateef, it was interesting because he had put out a top 7 before Nebraska even offered him, with Georgia, Auburn, Colorado, FSU, Ole Miss, Arizona, Texas A&M, and then Nebraska offered with their entire basically offensive staff on February 5th, and then got him in for a visit. And so this really all happened kind of very quickly for a quarterback, that's a pretty highly ranked recruit. Nebraska had him on campus, I think, just the one time, maybe another time. But, it was still a big recruitment. I think, Glenn Thomas did play a big role in it. But, yeah, it's really important to lock down talent at the quarterback position because, Nebraska's in a good spot right now, but you need to keep, that rolling forward. He completed, over 60% of his passes the last 2 years, 63% last year. He had 13 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, rushed for, 230 yards. So he's not – a completely polished product. He's going to need some time to develop in Lincoln, but he'll obviously get that behind Dylan Raiola, and it gives Nebraska another option, especially if Daniel Kalen doesn't stick around for all of his time, which I think that he will, but it gives him another option in case that he doesn't.
And it gives, a potential receiver targets, kind of reassurance that they're going to get to play with a solid quarterback, and it might make their decision easier when it comes, time to commit. And I can't remember the last time Nebraska's had this level of talent in the quarterback room. Certainly not in my years of being a fan, but I think it really speaks to the job that Matt Rule and his coaching staff have done, and I think it's just incredible when you look at, and I not to go off on a little side quest over here, but when you look at the talent in the quarterback room and in the offensive line and how they've been completely remade over the past couple of years, or the past year and a half, excuse me, I think it just speaks to how hard this staff works in terms of recruiting.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of who this recruitment really came down to, at the end of the day, in the end, it was really a Nebraska Colorado battle. With Ole Miss was in there as well, but Colorado was the only other place that TJ visited. At least this spring, he took a visit and saw Deion Sanders a couple of weeks ago. So I feel like that. Basically, that's another head-to-head victory, for Nebraska. But they, made the effort. I mean, their coaching staff. I mean, that's something that he talked about. He said Nebraska made me feel wanted, and since Deion doesn't really leave campus, I mean, he probably didn't make him feel as wanted as Nebraska, who sent their entire coaching staff to go see him. So, Nebraska, he said, is somewhere I can live with my parents, and I'm comfortable knowing I'll be playing the game I love, but and just some other things. But basically, and then he talked about Matt Rule. He's excited to be part of the program that he's building there. He said he wants to compete. Obviously, it's going to be, he's not going to make it over Dylan Raiola or whatever. But he said if they really go by best man plays, I would love to compete in that and see where it goes. They have an NFL based offense, and I feel like the biggest goal is to get me to the next level. So, there's probably a good chance that he does start some games for Nebraska. We'll have to see how it all plays out with Daniel Kalen and Raiola and all that. It's very possible that, maybe either Kalen or Lateef never starts a game for Nebraska, to be honest. So that's just kind of the way that quarterback recruiting works nowadays.
Honestly, I like Lateef better than Kalen. I know that may not be a popular take, but I like what Lateef brings to the table a little bit more in terms of arm strength and pocket presence. But we'll see how it all pans out. I think you're right in terms of maybe neither Kalen nor Lateef ever starts a game for Nebraska, but right now I like where we sit.
Yeah, it's definitely a good place to be, having a third, now three basically top 20 quarterbacks. And, that's used to be, Nebraska used to get some of the top option quarterbacks. I mean, like Tommy Frazier was one of the top quarterbacks in his class, but he was, known as more of an option guy. And so they could be in the mix for, those type of guys, but they've never had the pro style passer that they've had, over the last few years with these guys and the depth that they're building in the room. So that's a really good thing. And hopefully they're able to keep it going into 2026. You need a good quarterback in every single class, just like you need, you can't recruit based on what your current roster is. You just need to add, as much talent as possible. And I think that they're doing that. And we'll see who they hone in on in 2026. I think right now, in terms of the quarterback targets, there's like 13 scholarships, that they've offered: Dayton Raiola, Vanden Bosch, some others. And it'll be interesting to see, who emerges as the top target, because it was that way, in 2025 till a few months ago. And then, when Mansky went to Iowa, wherever he went, I can't even remember now.
Iowa State.
Yeah, Iowa State. So, once they missed out on him, they were able to switch kind of onto TJ Lateef. And so we'll see who they really hone in on in the 2026 class. But I feel like a lot of that's going to depend on how Dayton Raiola plays, this upcoming season, because I think that's going to impact not only his ranking, but his evaluation, a lot by this staff and others.
I have to say, I saw, a couple clips of him playing, and holy cow, does he have an arm at 16 years old? I mean, he is going to be an absolute stud. And I think Nebraska obviously is definitely going to kick the tires there. They've already had him for a couple, spring game visit, and obviously his brother is on the team, so he'll probably be down in Lincoln a couple more times over the course of the next couple of years. But man, Dayton Rail is really good as well. and it's not just hype. He really does have skill.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm wondering why he hasn't been ranked yet, by any of the recruiting services in terms of the 2026 quarterbacks. Because he's, at least right now, he's not viewed anywhere near the top of the rankings. So I don't know if that'll change this year, with the big season at Buford. But yeah, right now he's not regarded, at least by the recruiting people, nearly the same way that his brother is.
It's gonna change. It's gonna change, and I think it's gonna change this year. I mean, Buford's one of the top high school programs in the country. We talked about it on Saturday, and just his overall, arm talent and his decision making. He still has a little bit of things to work on, but again, he's 16 years old, so he'll have time to polish those things, and he's gonna be a really good quarterback as well.
Yeah, we'll see what he can do. This year if he does have a standout season. I mean, he's definitely one of the quarterbacks in the mix. Like I said, I don't think you could say that Nebraska is separated on its top targets, but it'll be
No.
interesting to see how that kind of goes moving forward. There is other recruiting news kind of going on this weekend. Three important visitors. David Sanders, obviously, and Broderick Scholl, were
Yep.
the most important ones. There was also an edge. I'll have to look up his name. I'm just blanking on it right now. But those are the two main targets. David Sanders and Broderick Scholl haven't really had a lot of, buzz coming out there. It does seem like Nebraska's, making a move for both guys. I did read a positive article about Broderick Scholl and, this visit helping things. I know that David Sanders brought in his entire family and his grandparents to this visit. So, that I think is a positive sign. But people bring in their family all the time and it ends up not meaning a damn thing. So in recruiting, it's one thing or another, but I don't think you can necessarily say like, oh, he brought his family, so he's necessarily going to commit, because guys do that before and then they never come back. So, I hope that Nebraska, made some positive headway with David Sanders, but we'll see. I'm sure that they did. I'll change what I said. I'm sure they made positive headway. I think they always do on their visits, but is it going to be enough to beat out Clemson? We'll have to see in that regard, but I think they have at least, a puncher's chance.
Yeah, at least I got him on campus for an official visit, and just getting a 5-star lineman on campus for an official visit is quite a feat in itself, especially when you consider the offensive line play over the last 4 or 5 years or so. And actually, I wouldn't even say that, because last year's line was pretty good. But anyway, the inconsistencies of the offensive line over the last couple of years, and now you kind of have options on the line in terms of depth and a lot of talent. So the fact that they were able to bring in Shull and Sanders is just a sign that they're serious about beefing up the line and making sure that they have the line to protect their quarterbacks. And again, it goes back to helping your quarterbacks. What do you do when you have a high quality quarterback, or when you have just quarterback in general? Surround him with talent in the wide receiver room. Make sure he's protected with a good offensive line. And Nebraska's, finally, starting to build the offensive side of the football the right way.
Yeah, and so this is what Scholl, I'm just reading through an article that he gave, or an interview he did with On 3, Husker Online, and basically he said, that Nebraska's essentially the co-leader after this with Auburn. He said, I have them head on with Auburn. I needed this OB, so it definitely looks like they made a move with Broderick Scholl. But I mean, like I said, kids say, I mean, if you ask a kid after a visit, he's always going to say positive things. I don't think there's ever been, unless you're really bad at what you're doing, I don't think there's ever been a recruiting visit that's probably like hurt you, unless you're just, the kid doesn't vibe with the coaching staff or whatever. So, I mean, I always take that with a grain of salt. I know he's going to be visiting Auburn. Like, Auburn's the team to beat right now, or has been the team to beat. He is out of Oklahoma, so it's kind of an interesting. It's not necessarily Texas, but it's a little more kind of in the range for Nebraska, I would say. But this was his third time on campus overall for Nebraska, his first unofficial visit. He's only visited Auburn once, which was earlier this spring, so he's taking his visit there in a couple weeks, then Texas Tech, and then Texas A&M. So that's kind of, I always say that the visits tell you where recruitment is headed most of the time, not always, but most of the time. So Texas Tech, Auburn, and Texas A&M. Auburn's probably the team to beat right now. So we'll see what the buzz is like in 2 weeks, and if Auburn can create, some similar momentum and grab the lead back, or if Nebraska, if Nebraska is still that co-leader, then I mean, my sense is that they would try to get him back for another visit this, sometime this summer. I think they'll probably have, last year they called it the cookout. That was a big weekend for Grant Bricks, if you'll recall. So I'm assuming they're going to do something like that, and then it's about getting guys on campus for for games in the fall if they still haven't made their decision. But overall, it's Nebraska's got 8 commitments. They've got their quarterback. It's not even May 15th, so that's A+ work for Matt Rule and company overall in this class.
And if you recall, Danny Kaelin committed to the program on May 20th, 2023. So something about the month of May, and quarterbacks for Nebraska over these last 2 years. And the month of June is shaping up to be quite the month. And Jaden Mangum, I'm actually looking now, is taking an official visit today. Today's the 13th. Yeah, today's the 13th. So he's taking an official visit today. The safety who played at Michigan last year had tackles and an interception against Nebraska. So I'll be interested to see what happens with that too. I would really like him on the roster, and we have a lot of safeties, but that Big Ten quote unquote veteran experience is certainly helpful as well.
Yeah, and from Michigan State, you said Michigan, but from Michigan State. Yes, had 3 interceptions last year. Visited Ohio State this weekend and is going to visit Michigan after this trip. So we'll see. Nebraska probably doesn't even have that favorable of the depth chart compared to at least Michigan in the secondary, at his position. But we'll see how it all works out. I think it'll be maybe not the easiest sell, but they could definitely carve out a role for him. But I'm not overly confident that he's going to be coming to Nebraska, but I really have no idea. Just to me, it feels like there's just too many bodies in the room for a guy that was like, honorable. I think he was honorable mention all Big Ten, or at least in that area, to want to come in and start. And, you've got Singleton, you've got Gifford, you've got Hartzog. So if they can get over that hurdle of kind of, showing him what his role would be, then I do think they have a chance. But I think that's the biggest. To me, that's what I see as the biggest hurdle for Nebraska. Whereas Michigan, I think there's more of a kind of step in and start role, where he could replace like Rod Moore, who was projected to be a top 40 draft pick, but tore his ACL a few weeks ago in spring ball. So I mean, that could be kind of a 1-to-1 replacement. So I just think in that regard, Michigan's going to have the advantage, and then Ohio State, is paying out their eyeballs for any talent. So you have to wonder about that too. But if Nebraska can get over that playing time role hurdle, then I do think they have a chance, and that maybe that would entail Malcolm Hartzog like being more of a true corner. I'm not sure, but at any rate, those are my thoughts on Jane Mangum.
Yeah, and I think it's a good sign again that they're kicking the tires on Mangum and doing their homework. And I was just looking at some of these visits coming up in the next month or so. Not even the next month, maybe month and a couple days, but the month of June is going to be busy. A busy month of June. You talk about like the cookout last year, was a big time for visits and stuff like that. June 21st we have 13 visits scheduled. June 14th we have 4 visits scheduled, including Corey Sims, the wide receiver from Missouri. On the June 21st calendar, you have Jalen Williams, Cade Petruzak, who put Nebraska in his top 4. You have Jamarian Parker, Chase Lofton, and the staff has visited Lofton. I believe they visited him last week. So there's a lot of big visits coming up, and it seems like that month of June, usually it used to be quiet in the summer back in the day and no news would happen. It seems like the month of June for Nebraska has been really successful, and it won't be a quiet June, in my opinion.
Yeah, and they still, there's still some work to do. And June's always, it's usually one of the busiest months in the recruiting. June and then early July after the dead period.
Yep.
And then Nicholas Clayton was the edge that visited this weekend, 6'5". He's unranked in the composite rankings. So there's a few of those guys that are kind of visiting Nebraska that are unranked. But Corey Sims is coming. I really don't have any hope with him. I've given up pretty much hope with Corey Sims at this point. I just have to. There's no shot he's coming here. Pierce Newberry is a name to watch, though. He's another in-state guy, and that's been a kind of a Nebraska Kansas State battle, so that's one to watch. And then another one I'm really watching closely outside of Chase Lofton, Christian Jones hasn't made his visit yet. Jamarian Parker too. I know everybody
Yeah.
thought like he was a slam dunk, but I think there's a reason Nebraska just offered another running back and got projected him by Brian Munson. So I don't know about you. I think I would be a little less confident in Jamarian Parker. Alabama's been interested. TCU's interested. So I think there's a reason though Nebraska is hedging its bet a little bit in the running back room. And then Jalen Williams is a guy that they need defensive line help. They got Tyson Terry in this class, but they need edge and they need D line, and they didn't really. They added some edges very late last year, so it would be nice to see them get some blue chip defensive linemen. That they haven't got the last couple of classes. They got Lenhart and Umamalian, but last year they got. McGahee is more of a jack, not really a true edge. So I'd like to see, Jalen Williams would be a really nice pickup, a defensive lineman. They're kind of in a battle with Michigan for him right now, but he'll also be visiting in June. So those are just some of the other kind of top targets I'm keeping my eye on, that we'll be visiting next month.
Yeah, and it's going to be a busy month, and in my opinion, I don't think we're going to see as many commitments as we did last year at this time, in June, but you never know. I mean, because June, we had 12 commitments last year?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I don't think we're going to see it to that level, but I could be wrong. I mean, 12 commitments again in June would be nice, or even, 10, but in my opinion, I think maybe I'd say maybe 3 or 4. I don't think it's going to be 12 12 like last year.
Yeah, it probably won't be quite that number, just the way it kind of stacked up. But I
Although you never
definitely,
know with the staff,
maybe like 5. I mean, it wouldn't shock me to have, like 5 or so, because this June is when you start seeing those, where you got like 12
Yeah, yeah.
recruits on campus. So, generally, if it's not in June, late July, early July, excuse me, late June, early July, that's probably more commitments probably happen in that like 2 to 3 week period, probably than any other time of the year. Like July 4th is always, a big college football recruiting time,
Yeah.
because guys are just making visits, cutting up their lists. And then it's interesting. Some take their decisions to the fall, but I would say, just throwing it, I would say 80% of guys have their decisions, done by the end of the summer. Most guys want to go into their high school season not having to worry about, their recruitment. Now, some still do, and some are late risers. Some of them are those top 50, like top 10 guys that really drag it out until signing day and all that type of stuff. And who knows, that Urban Meyer was talking the other day about, people getting paid NIL money to do visits. And that's the second time, or like the third time, that Ohio State people have said that. So I don't know. It seems kind of pathetic if Ohio State people have to pay recruits just to get them on campus. I don't think it doesn't seem like, I haven't heard Nebraska having to do that. I don't know.
I don't know. It just sounds like another old man who's bored and has a lot of free time to me. I mean, you see Saban, Meyer,
Yeah.
shut up. Like, if you can't get with the times, just shut up.
I just thought it was funny. He's like,
Yeah.
basically, like the article, he didn't say it, but essentially it was like hinted that NIL has devolved into cheating. And it's like, so you're saying Ohio State is cheating because they're the team that's doing NIL harder than anybody right now. So it's kind of like, okay.
It's
But
just
yeah, you're
another old
right.
head complaining that ruin college football and blah blah blah, and I don't know. I just don't have time for it. Nick Saban has too much time on his hands. Urban Meyer has too much time on his hands. I mean, you'll start to see a lot of older coaches leave college football, and make room for the younger coaches or the coaches who want to do the NIL stuff, and that's just the way the game is going. I mean, and I think a lot of the older, more successful coaches are mad that their tactics are, now available to everybody.
Yeah, instead of them being able to only pay the few elite talents
Yeah.
like Urban and Nick Saban used to do back in the day. Like there's like you'll never convince me that Urban and Nick weren't dropping bags of, maybe not McDonald's bags like the Tennessee people, but they were paying people. Then there's no question in my mind about that.
Of course they were.
There's a reason that scandal has followed Urban Meyer everywhere he's gone. He's a great coach, but scandal follows him literally everywhere he goes, and that's for a reason. So
His name is Pete Carroll.
Yeah, him and Pete Carroll. All right, so we'll wrap it up there. I do want to touch on before we go. I just want to touch on the softball and baseball. So, baseball did blow a lead on Friday night, but got 2 victories over the weekend. They had a walk-off home run from Cole Evans on Saturday night, a 3-run homer, and that loss on Friday though is still proving very costly because if Nebraska had won that game, they would be tied for first place in the Big Ten with Illinois right now. And the good news is that Nebraska owns the tiebreaker. So if Illinois and Nebraska end up tied, Nebraska would be the Big Ten champion. But there's a whole host of teams that are in the race. Illinois is playing at Purdue this weekend, which is another. I think they're tied with Nebraska for second place right now. And then Nebraska's playing at Michigan State, which is kind of they're a middle of the pack team. So to be honest, Nebraska's probably going to have to sweep Michigan State on the road this weekend, which is a big ask, and then hope that Illinois loses one game. It's possible they lose 2, but that seems like to be asking for a lot. And we'll see, though. It's great to be going into the final weekend having a shot at the Big Ten championship, though. Can't ask for more than that.
Yeah, but at the same time,
I could ask for more than that, but I'll be happy with that, I guess.
The road to get here was unnecessarily complicated at some points of the season, but hey, now they have a chance to get a Big Ten championship. I mean, that's all you can ask for at the end of the day. I mean, like you just said, I guess you could ask for more, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it's the starting pitching has been better, but the bullpen has cost them this year, so they need to get that. That'll be on the off-season to-do list for Rob Childress. But I do think they really helped themselves yesterday in the NCAA tournament aspect of it because Indiana's a pretty solid team. So we'll see. It'd be nice if they could win the championship outright. But the softball team, which blew their lead on Saturday, they did get left out of the NCAA tournament, so their season's over. So in terms of the diamond stuff for Nebraska, it's down just to baseball, and this is the last weekend of the regular season. Then we'll be into Big Ten tournament play, and then we'll be pretty much done with, outside of track and field, which is they had their championships this weekend, and Nebraska did have a bunch of impressive stuff there. Jalen Lloyd too was like 4th in one of the jumps, so pretty incredible athlete there. It's fun to watch. It's going to be a lot more fun to watch scoring touchdowns this fall for the Huskers, which I expect him to do that plenty, like he did last year. So
yeah, no, he was an absolute stud last year, and what was a poor passing offense, or struggling passing offense, I should say. So I can't wait to see him. He had a great spring for football, so I think he's on the right track.
Yeah, you want to say Nebraska had one of the worst passing offenses in all of college football, and he still scored 3 touchdowns that were over 50 yards. Maybe it was 4. I just know that he had the same number as Marvin Harrison. And looking at that Ohio State offense and that Nebraska offense, I think that says a lot about Jalen Lloyd and what he's able to do. And it's going to be fun seeing him with a big-time quarterback like Dylan Raiola. So at any rate, guys, that'll be the rest of the show here. So if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, check out HuskerBigRed.com, and have a great rest of your day. And as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.